welcome to episode 11, I think now, of Cloudy with a Chance of Insights, the bi-weekly podcast all around the Microsoft Cloud and other interesting bits of tech that we may well come across during the course of the 2 weeks in between the recordings. This week, I'm going to be talking a little bit about a new release for Copilot Studio called Computer Use. David is going to be talking about a Microsoft program that does sort of security operations centers for universities, or at least collaborates with the universities on those. And Cyrus will be wrapping up, I think, with some information about some changes to the CVE program, as well as some Agentic AI releases with relation to Defender. So before we kick off this week, I've had a very interesting week dealing with Microsoft support. All entirely my fault, I have to admit. So for those of us that know about this, and this is a very specific sort of Microsoft partner thing, there's a website called cdx.microsoft.com. It used to be called, I think, Microsoft Demos or something like that. But basically, you can go there as a partner, log in, and you can sort of spin up M365 tenants. So you get like 25 users, E5 licenses. Sometimes you can sort of configure it with content in there. So it's a really sort of nice place to sort of go in there and, you know, demo a Contoso instance. So Microsoft used to have the ability to do this for a year, and you could renew. So you'd sign up for a tenancy for a year, and then every year, a month before the end date, you'd renew it. And quite frankly, Microsoft would say, yes, there you go, you can renew it. So I've been using my instance for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now, possibly a little bit longer. And, you know, I'd attached a domain name to it. I had content in SharePoint. I'd actually moved an Azure subscription over to the tenancy, which is where the fun and games is starting. But as people know, well, I'm assuming they do, Microsoft has done this Secure Futures Initiative program. About a year or so ago, they announced this. I think it was probably as a direct result of the Outlook and Exchange incident they had with some of the US government agencies. And one of the impacts of that is they looked at some of these things like the CDX instances and other sort of demo instances or sort of, you know, partner freebies, for want of a better word, they'd sort of given out, or internal use pieces. I went, blimey, we've got an awful lot of these. Do we need them? Is it a security risk? Is it actually taking up compute that we could be using elsewhere, for example? So they made a couple of sweeping changes to that. So you can no longer get year-long tenancies. So that's gone. The most you can get now is 90 days. And you can't renew them. So there's no option to spin one up and then just keep renewing it every 90 days in this instance. So me being the observant person I am, didn't actually really notice this was going on until I tried to log in one day and got told, oh, no, you can't log in. And I was like, okay, fine. You know, there wasn't really anything in there that I was really that fussed about. What I'd forgotten, though, is that the Azure subscription I'd moved into there had a file. I was only using it as a file share. So just like a standard SMB, and I had it mapped as a drive on my old Windows laptop, but obviously I can't do that on a Mac laptop as such. Not the same way anyway. You sort of can, but I hadn't bothered to set it up. So I didn't notice that had also disappeared. And Microsoft were actually still invoicing me for this. And it wasn't until I actually saw the invoice about a month ago and I went, oh, hang on a second, I've completely forgotten about this. And it had all sorts of stuff on there. And I thought, okay, right, I better go and look at that. Couldn't log in because obviously the tenancy that's now put on that subscription doesn't exist because Microsoft killed it as part of the Secure Futures Initiative. So I was getting invoiced for something that I couldn't see. I couldn't get to the billing information. I couldn't get to anything. The subscription that it used to be part of, I could still log into, but I'd moved that subscription to the new tenancy. So I had no rights to do anything within that subscription. Oh, so anyway, as I said, my fault. So I managed to sort of wiggle my way into the Microsoft support queue, which as an individual, you know, realistically, I shouldn't have been able to do because it is for businesses only. I managed to sort of get some support from there. And cut a long story short, they call it an orphaned subscription. So basically, the subscription is still there, all the resources were there, but it just floats around in like the ether with no connectivity or anything.
Wow.
So there's a process that I've forgotten the name of, but it's basically a billing subscription owner migration, which they can kick off in the back end. It's a bit of a faff, takes a while, so you have to provide a lot of information to make sure you are the right person. So you can't just go in there and say, okay, I did this subscription for, I don't know, company X years ago, and then try to get Microsoft to move that subscription across to you. But yes, so it took a little while, took somewhere between 4 and 5 days with memory serves, and then got some excellent support from Microsoft's support team over in, I'm assuming in India, I could be wrong, to help with that. And I managed to get yesterday the file share back and access the content on there, which I downloaded, which probably cost me about 20 quid. I don't know, to download onto the laptop. And I now need to spend some time this morning in my free time cleaning up the hard drive on the MacBook, because it's only got 256 gig, and this took up almost all the free space. So I don't know whether I've got enough to actually do the editing for this without cleaning some of that data up first. But anyway, so shout out to the Microsoft support team for that, and for anybody that might be a partner that has done something similar. Please be aware of that limitation. But also, that site is a really good resource. So again, if you are a partner, and it is only available to partners, cdx.microsoft.com or cdx.transform.microsoft.com. I can't remember what the exact URL is. I'll put it into the chat windows. Really good resource. But bear in mind that it is only 90 days, and they do kill that tenancy after the 90 days. So don't do anything that you need to keep going.
Super good.
Yeah. If you do, and again, there is technically this is only 90 days, and you do need to renew it. There is the developer option, which again gives you a cut down version of M365, but it does give you mailboxes, SharePoint, a few other bits and pieces as well. So I think if you look for developer benefit or something like a developer subscription, should pick it up. But again, I'll put the link to that in the chat window. So yeah, so that's one of the things that I've been faffing about with this week, which has taught me a valuable lesson of not to move subscriptions into demo tenants and then forget about them.
Nice story.
So anything from you guys before we crack into the sort of main section of this?
Super interesting. I'm going to say now, I'm going to stick with my little story. We'll have a conversation around that, yeah. I'm sure.
Yes.
Just maybe one thing for you, Richard. This should definitely be a short on YouTube. The discussion about partners. I know there's so many questions about partners and not enough content. And you teach me a lot of things about partners when I joined IBM. So definitely this should be on YouTube as a short.
Excellent. In which case, I will kick off with an article that I found yesterday, and I think it was actually only published a couple of days ago. And this is around Copilot Studio. And there is a new function or feature that they've launched. So yes, the post was 15th of April, around something called computer use. And this isn't capitalized on the article, so I'm assuming this is not the title of the service. But basically what it's enabling you to do within Copilot Studio is to manipulate user interfaces. So you can go and tell it to go and click on button X and, type X into the text box over here, and to scroll down and to do this, and etc. So it's a way of doing basically RPA, or robotic process automation, but within Copilot. Now, one of the things that they're saying is a good use case for this, and unfortunately, to sign up for the trial, you have to provide a US tenancy ID and a few other bits and pieces, which I couldn't. One of the joys of IBM is I couldn't provide that, so I couldn't sign up for the trial. Is that what it can do, as opposed to things like, I don't know, David, whether you ever did anything with Coded UI in Visual Studio, which was a way that you could actually do things as part of an automated test script. So when you were writing an application, you go, right, if you put this value in this text box, this value in this text box, and you click add, this is the result that you would expect, and this is the behavior. So, but that was actually quite a bit of a faffy process to sort of do. And obviously, if you change the user interface, you then have to go and rewrite that test case. what they're saying here is that in theory, if the buttons or screen change, the tool will still work without you having to go and redo that flow. And obviously, natural language should be easier for people to use and to program. So that might be interesting. Now, weirdly, the use cases they've given within the article are different to the one that immediately sprang to my mind, which was that coded sort of UI interface test as part of a DevSecOps tool chain. What they've done is automated data entry, which I thought was interesting because I suppose that's more for SME businesses. Because I think if you're going to be doing that in a large enterprise, you've probably already got some sort of ETL data ingestion sort of process going on in the background. Although perhaps this might be a more cost-effective way of doing it. But market research, so basically, in effect, website scraping, I think is what they're referring to there.
Interesting.
Of sort of having your tool go off and go to, I don't know, easyjet.com and checking all the prices. Invoice processing, which might be interesting for some of our colleagues who are doing the sort of source to pay piece. That might well sort of fit into that use case. But it got me thinking that RPA is around for a while. And I don't know if any of you two caught the release of something called the Rabbit R1 last year. So this is again my nerdy seeds coming out. So I'll grab a picture of it. It's a little orange device about so big.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about now. I was my brain was going straight to Rabbit MQ. I was like, why are we talking about queuing technologies? But anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So it was a little device, I don't know, $200, $300 or something like that, designed by a company called Teenage Engineering, who I am aware of because they also create pocket operators and portable synths. So they're in the sort of music hardware world. And what that was supposed to do, and I don't think it worked very well. Apologies, Rabbit, if for anything out there, but there's certainly some reviews that said it was, a nice design, but perhaps a little bit limited in functionality. But they're something updating it. Is that's what that was designed to do. You would actually basically tell it to go and, I want to go and book a ticket for X, Y, and Z or whatever it might well be. And it was actually going in behind the scenes and doing this. So navigating around websites, operating systems, whatever it might well be, to sort of process some of these. So it's interesting that Microsoft has sort of come up with another alternate. I was interested, again, using that phrase once more, in the use cases that it's come up with, because I could think of probably some different use cases than that for this type of activity. And what that means for some of the more traditional RPA tools. Are we going to start to see UiPath coming up with in fact, we might already have seen them come up with an agentic tool to do some of this. But anyway, that was the first piece that I was going to pick up on today. There was a smaller bit, which again is old news, new news in a way. So in one of the Windows releases coming up, Microsoft have given you the option now apparently to opt in to Windows Recall. So I'm sure we all remember there was a bit of a fuss a year or so ago when this was originally released around, privacy, you can access all this data, et cetera. So that is being released as part of an opt-in program. And there are some additional controls around it. So I'll put the link to the article so you can go and read all those. But you're going to need to sign up to Windows Hello. You can choose what type of sort of snapshots or data it's saving. And again, I'm using a Mac, so it's difficult for me to sort of comment about how that would be useful, because there isn't a similar feature that I'm aware of certainly out of the box with a Mac. But I do think that could be quite a nice use case. The amount of times I go, oh, hang on a second, I know that I saw an article on a website 6 months ago about this, or I read a post, or I did something about this. And, as good as the search tools are in things like Outlook or SharePoint or whatever it might well be, it still would be a lot easier if you had that sort of natural language piece to say, okay, it was about this and this, but it might also have had this in there, and it could, in theory, go and find it. So we'll see what's happened. They did do an announcement around it, but it was buried within a larger announcement. So you'll see that if you go and review the piece. But however, still, Verge picked it up, BBC picked it up, loads of other news outlets.
Lots of people.
It is still that privacy piece. Yeah. So it will be interesting to see how that sort of falls through. Or
Yeah,
falls through.
lots and lots of people are not that happy about it. But I've got it on my so I've got Snapdragon Surface, and one of the reasons I got it was because I wanted the NPU chip that was in there, but also so that you can play with that recall thing. And it's exactly the use case you just said for me, right? Because I know that I saw something. For the life of me, I can't remember it, but it helps you search through. But because it's sort of every X duration that it takes the snapshot, obviously it can miss stuff as well quite a lot, because if you're flicking between stuff really quickly, then it won't necessarily catch it. But I find it really useful.
Yeah, it's something that certainly as I get older, I find that sort of functionality would help me an awful lot. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see whether there's an app in the App Store that I can do, or perhaps I'll trade in the Mac eventually and go back to a Windows device, which I must admit I am tempted to do. Which does it's a slight correlation. So I saw this on I think it was Bleeping Computer, that there's a couple of CVEs that have been targeted at Macs, and it does make me, or Apple devices I should say, and it does make me sort of think back to the days when one of the big selling points of Apple's was the fact they weren't targeted for viruses, and they were safer. But I suspect that, and in fact, we were saying at the time that's because if you're a hacker, you're going to target the most popular operating systems and devices. And as Apple was slowly creeped up behind on that, the vulnerabilities and the CVEs, etc., are becoming more prevalent on the Apple devices than perhaps than the equivalent number on Windows. We'll see how that plays out. Which actually, I suppose,
more the browser. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, which actually brings me on to one of the topics that Cyrus wanted to cover, which was CVEs.
Oh,
and I didn't plan that.
Sorry, no. I was about to make a comment about the Mac versus Windows. The security relies often on the unexpected is the browser, because you can steal so many information. The cryptocurrency, the crypto miners, etc. You can just use the browser and the cookies to just pull information that you need. So, and the same JavaScript works on Windows, on Mac, on any device. So you're not really safe on any OS if you don't have the basic caution and care. Sorry, yeah, I can talk about the CVE now because okay, there was some drama these last 2 days. So when you will see that recording, maybe it will be more than a week. So part of the new American program, I can't say it, the DOGE. Sorry, I can't pronounce it correctly.
Department of Government Efficiency.
Thank you very much. Yes, exactly. DOGE. Okay, excuse me. So that program blindly targeted multiple American agencies for good and bad reason. And one of the victims of that recently is the CVE board that is managed by MITRE. So it's the MIT, and is a subgroup of the MIT. And they announced recently that they knew for a year that it will be a target, but now they recently announced that the 16th of April, it's the last day of that running funding program. So there was a lot of drama, what happened to us, etc. So there's two points of view. It's a catastrophe, or you have to have the good practice of updating your vulnerabilities anyway. So if you have Palo Alto, Fortinet, Cisco, Microsoft, doesn't matter, you still need the habit to update no matter what for the security reason. I understand that sometimes can be annoying because you have also the feature updates that can bring more bugs, etc. We can't we can't debate that now because it's going to be too long. But recently, so the last news is from yesterday. So as a part of recording, so the 16th of April, I'm going to just read that small passages. So it's this letter. It's not fully official, but it seems to come. It seems to be like a kind of official. It's coming from within some members of the board of the CVE Foundation. And I will not read the whole letter, but I will share it, and probably it can be shared on the screen. The CVE Foundation has been formally established to ensure the long-term viability, stability, and independence of the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposure, the CVE program, a critical pillar for the global security infrastructure for 25 years. I cut to the bit that interests me. In response, so they said that actually the US government decided to not fund us anymore, blah, blah, blah. And in response, a coalition of long-time active CV board members have spent the past year developing a strategy to transition CVE to a dedicated non-profit foundation. The new CV foundation will focus solely on continuing the mission of delivering high-quality vulnerability identification and maintaining the integrity and availability of CV data for defenders worldwide. So that is kind of a good news because true or not, there is a common desire to continue this no matter what. And program like Defenders or Microsoft Defenders and everything else rely a lot on the CV to be organized, to have a common language. We had lucky enough, we had a podcast a few episodes ago about this. So let's see what happens. But it's good anyway because there's a global community worldwide that will do the best. If it's American or not, doesn't matter. It will be like open source.
Super interesting, Cyrus. I completely missed that. That's really, really interesting.
It happened just 2 days ago. Like the first letter was like in the public, like the 15th, one day before the last day of, because they still hope that they're going to, from what I understood, they still hope that they can't cut that fund. It's impossible. It will, and they did. So everything is possible.
Absolutely, and I don't know whether it's related. I think it is, but CISA has been under pressure as well in the US for Doge, wow. And I know that they've had a lot of people sort of let go and sort of cut back. Might be unrelated. I haven't really been paying a lot of attention to the CISA stuff, but yeah, it is going to be something to keep an eye on. I think what's going on with a lot of those sort of security agencies in the US, if they are having sort of pressure put on them to reduce staff or even have staff removed. So I think the leader of the NSA was sacked a couple of weeks ago as well. I could have just made that up. I will validate that and stick it in the show notes. But yes. So David, Microsoft SOC sort of university program, which is a topic that is sort of close to my heart for reasons I will expand upon a little bit later, but over to you.
Yeah, and this is really interesting for me because it reminded me of my time in education, bizarrely. So when I was at school doing my A-levels, I was doing computing and Welsh, and my teacher realized that actually I personally learned better through sort of being challenged and more hands-on stuff than the whole written thing, right? So as we started A-levels, he sort of threw down the gauntlet and said, well, you try and hack the network then. And if you hack the network, you'll get whatever. And very, very confident in the fact that it would never happen. And by the time I left, I had managed to, which I was really, really pleased with myself. And it was an old server that he'd reappropriated as a computer, but he'd left a bunch of stuff on it. So it was just sort of sat there. So I managed to find it and do things with it anyway. And I guess, if you're a college student and instead of just attending lectures and submitting assignments, you're actually helping to actively defend your university against real cyber threats. If you think about that, you're not just learning about cybersecurity, you're living it, right? And that's what what's the acronym? Student Security Operations Centers, or Student SOCs. So this initiative that's sort of transforming the educational experience. And I think most of this is in the US at the moment, right? But I think that really helps pivot people to redefining what career readiness is, right? Because these people actually have that hands-on experience. And it's only recently announced, it was announced this month, and it's, as I said, aimed at bridging kind of the skills gap between the theoretical and the doing. And I guess most of us in the UK, we would you need some sort of apprenticeship, I guess, right? Realistically, to be able to get that experience. So that helps sort of bridge that skills gap that we see in the Cybersecurity Centre, because it can be quite hard work, right, Richard? I think the Cybersecurity Centre, especially when things go wrong. So having being able to experience some of that pressure, some of those things, that situations that you find yourselves in are only ever found in doing, right? I think. So the program offers a bunch of free resources, and we'll link to those in the chat, right? But it's called the Student SOC Toolkit, and that helps. Obviously, it helps the educational institutions in establishing their own SOC, and then these centres can be used to provide the students with a hands-on experience using stuff like Sentinel and Copilot, Defender Copilot, Defender XDR, and all that stuff, right? So I think one of the universities in the article, it was Auburn University, and one of the students there, that allowed him to work alongside, obviously, the university SOC people and full-time cybersecurity professionals. He was able to review incident reports and sort of investigate suspicious activities. And then 2 weeks after graduation, he was able to walk into a job essentially with all that experience, and a clear differentiator for him, right? So it gave him that real invaluable experience. So, these student SOCs, I think obviously that's one example. I think in the US, the metric is, I'm going to read it. Hang on, where is it? That's it. So with over 400,000 unfulfilled cybersecurity roles in the US alone, right? And that's significant. So, I think, this sort of program, is essential. Is that the right word? I don't know. But, helping people prepare for these challenges of moving into this industry. So I thought that was really interesting. And obviously, Richard, I know this is something that's very close to your heart. So what do you think? Do you think it's a good way of bridging that gap between education and the real world? What do you think?
I think it is. Now IBM have a similar, I believe, I'm going to have to do a little bit of digging around this. In the US, they have a similar program, I think either in US or Canada. And one of the cyber ranges, which again, I think is the Canadian cyber range. And we talked about cyber range in about 2 episodes previously, I think. So I'll try and put the link in the top if I can figure out how to do that in YouTube. And they are working with universities to sort of, to provide that training, but also to provide the experience. And you're right. There's a technical element which I always learn best by actually trying to figure it out. If you give me a textbook, and I'm in the garage, I've got a whole sort of box of textbooks that I probably never ever read, apart from the first page, which talks about object orientation and how that is like different cars. And that works as the object, and that's about as far as I get within those books. So I learned by actually by physically trying to work on something and trying to find out how that actually works. So I think a lot of people are like that. So if you've got a sort of more hands-on experience, then that's great. But also, again, this comes back to a little bit about the cyber range. There's one thing about doing it technically, but there's one thing about then sort of sitting there and going, it's actually happening, the pressure, the sort of speed that you have to make decisions, the consequences of those decisions. And so if you can role play that or get the experience of having that scenario go on, I think that's only going to put you in a better stead. Mm-hmm. And weirdly, the reason why I said it was close to my heart is not necessarily because obviously currently I'm doing a cyber security type role or in the cybersecurity service part of IBM. And again, I should be very careful about the amount of information I'm sharing out onto the public here. But my daughter's actually doing a degree course at the moment at Portsmouth Uni, which is, I always get the name of this wrong because it's a really stupidly named course, but it's something like cybercrime, counterintelligence, and what's the third one? Counterterrorism, intelligence, and cybercrime. It's a dual degree. She gets a year in Australia, in Perth, in the University in Perth, to do this.
Amazing.
But they also have a SOC. So they actually have a SOC that they can sort of train them up on and do things. She hasn't done. She's only in the first year, so they haven't done that part of the syllabus yet. But I think that's really, really important, and it does. And obviously, universities aren't doing this, but that perhaps they're not promoting it or don't have the same sort of weight as a Microsoft or an IBM to say, "Hey, look, this is what we're doing." And it might even be in partnership. I know they are using some IBM secure tools in that course, and we do have a lot of alumni at IBM that went to Portsmouth University. If you have a look on sort of LinkedIn, you'll see that there's quite a few hundred of them. So perhaps there's a link there. I never bothered to look, but I think we've got the IBM cost of a data breach report coming out at some point over the next. It might even be out by the time this podcast is out, but it certainly will be out at some point. I think April, May, at the latest. And normally that will have a section in there about the skills gap, and the skills gap is massive, and it's only going to get bigger unless we do something about it, and both within the UK but also globally. And the skills shortage is quite amazing, and something that we do need to try and figure out how to fix.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just want to make that comment for the audience. We, David, Richard, and I, we now recently don't have time to communicate before recording those episodes. I was not aware of what Richard and David are going to present, so I am genuinely surprised by that program. I've never heard of that program, David. It's very interesting. Also, for the democratization of SOC, like we all believe that it's for big companies, or you use a third party to provide that because you need a movie-like type of multi-screen and etc. But as you said, a student who is interested to help the university can come and be enabled with the Microsoft, for example, tools or anything else, and just with those tools and the practice change, that is a SOC, and continuously looking for threats and fixing CVEs and etc. That's very smart from Microsoft to make such programs. So I'm going to check that after the call.
Excellent. And Cyrus, you wanted to talk a little bit about Agentic AI and Defender as well. So seeing as you were tying up that section, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. I try to not digress usually, and it happens in the middle of presentation, or the reason I try to think about that. The reason of my digression comes from translation. So that's when I lost myself. And the problem I have is now I'm lost at the start. I try to look for a word in English and it's used in French. It's called hasard. And we have the word I saw in English by doing I was Googling just now before starting hasard, and means like a randomness or an event that you didn't expect and happen, etc. And also, weird enough, the person who shared that information with me before the recording was a colleague with his name Hazar. And I understood that in Arabic, al-Hazar means rolling the dice. So it's all the randomness. So why I'm talking about a word is because recently, like a few months ago, I wanted to rewatch the Matrix, all the 3 episodes, plus the new one, because I've never watched the new one. I didn't want to watch it because of I have a bad habit to watch the review before watching a movie, which is probably bad. I should just go and do my own opinion. That's something else. So why I talk about the Matrix is because of Agent Smith. And we talk about agent everywhere. And when I discovered what's agentic AI, I can't just think of all the example that comes is Agent Smith, a sort of person who go everywhere, who is independent, Agent Smith is kind of bad, but imagine an agent that is doing his job and just learn, discover, and protect your virtual environment. That's the type of agent I was interested in, and but there is plenty of agents. For example, Richard, you were talking about this ability now to type on the keyboard with some generative AI tool. Recently, I discovered also Power Automate Desktop. I know it's old, but now the Power Automate Desktop can automate tasks that is from within your desktop, launch an application and then connect, etc. So there's so many things you can do with Agentic AI. But first, what is Agentic AI Agentic? We know kind of the AI assistant, the Gen AI, the tools like ChatGPT. You do a prompt on the answers, and then it evolved into RAG, so retrieval augmented generation. So that RAG enhance what is going to pass through that prompt. Because once it is going to that prompt, it's going to the LLM or the SLM and give you an answer. So the RAG kind of, it's like an AI chef that will check the recipe before passing to the kitchen, right? So it's kind of making sure that whatever you pass to the LLM is going to be relevant. Check specific databases, public or internally to the company. So that RAG is what will be used for those new type of agents called Agentic. So there's so many explanations that are going to be better than what I can try to do. IBM has one of the best on YouTube. They have a channel, IBM Technology, and you type AI Agentic, and there's a good explanation. But my 2 cents will be to see the agent as independent, can run on multiple models. So they can run on Llama 2, on whatever models you want, and will be completely independent so you give the instruction and will be independent to come back to you and ask more details or check whatever that tool has access to. APIs can create threads and talk with different agents or even humans to enhance the recording, to enhance the discovering, and then come back to you with the most relevant, like an assistant, like literally a supercharged assistant who say, actually, in your request, you forgot to ask me also that. So I did my due diligence and I also checked. So let me give examples so it can be more interesting. So why I talk about that, the 25th of March, Microsoft released that news, but I missed. So thank you, Azar, for sharing that news with me. It's Microsoft Security Copilot agents. And those, when I read the article, I don't want to exaggerate here. I had goosebumps. I was like, that's it. Last year, when Microsoft shared the Microsoft Security Copilot, I was happy, but not happy. Happy because it looked promising, but you can just use GenAI to do things I already do with my own tools. We have a tool in IBM Consulting Advantage, or ChatGPT or whatever. But now you have to pay 100 kind of K for just free virtual machines to do that. And it cannot generate anything. It recently happened that it can generate some KQL, but it was really basic. And now that news almost exactly 1 year later, April 2025, now we have the agents and what the agents can do. So there's five example they give is on the phishing triage, alert triage for Purview. So you have an agent for Purview, for Entra, for Intune, and for threat intelligence, I think. That imagine my 3 most favorite one is a Purview. For example, you have we discussed 2 weeks ago about insider risk management, data lost DLPs. So I was explaining naively, like, you still need a human to check if it's real alerts, or for example, sometimes there's a lot of alerts about personal IDs discovered into that shares, etc. But actually, you check it's actually the user personal OneDrive, so it's a false alarm. That agent, as I understood, can check that context and can learn from admins. So when admins declare that is a false positive, it will learn why and check the description, etc. So there's a lot that it can do. Give you more example. So as I said, generate KQL for devices. So for Intune to do data analysis. For Entra, it will identify and rectify gaps in condition access policies by itself without you asking for that, and also enhance some policies you put in place. So there's a lot to say, and it's now more practical than all the theory I had before. So exacting. So Agent Smith in real life and a good guy now. Oh, sorry. And my 2 cents on the Matrix. Please, if you have watched Matrix like me when you were like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it's in 1999. Last time I watched was 2003 when there was the video games. I remember I was really young. When you watch the Matrix now, it's very interesting. The language they use was really advanced because AI was not a thing, an agent, and the way they think like robots. I was a kid, so I was like, okay, it's cool. But IT is not that stage. When you watch it today, it's almost prophetic. It's really interesting. I mean, if you can just watch it.
Yeah,
That's it.
Just the last one. I was not that impressed with the with the last iteration of the Matrix, but personal opinion. I'm sure that there are lots of people out there that loved it. A bit like Star Wars, I suppose. Just the age demographics means you have a different viewpoint on some of those. Anyway, thank you for that, Cyrus. And yet, I mean, Microsoft, I think Build is coming up, where I'm sure that they're going to be delving into some of those agentic tools in the security space in a lot more detail. So we'll see what comes out of that. Right, David, anything else from you before we close off this week?
No, I don't think so. Before we go into a tangent of sci-fi and films and prophetic things, we could start talking about the Simpsons, but it's probably best we don't. So let's move on.
Or Futurama.
Or Futurama, indeed.
Excellent. No, I think that was all I had as well. So there's a couple of events coming up. I think it's Infosecurity. Is it Infosecurity UK Cloud or Cyber Week next week. So there's 2 days in Olympia, which I might well be going to. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. So there might be some interesting things that come out from any conversations there. We do have Infosecurity coming up in the first week of June, I believe, in the UK, and RSA end of April. So there's lots of security events happening over the next couple of weeks. For an IBM world, we've got Think in Boston, I believe in May, possibly. So again, that's possibly a source of news. But as I say, we try and be sort of more Microsoft focused on here. So we'll figure out what is relevant, and we'll bring that to you in 2 weeks' time. After I'm hoping we all enjoy a good sort of long weekend, because it is the Easter bank holiday this weekend as we record on the Thursday. And I should really, and I keep saying this almost every time, say this right at the start of the recording. But if you did like or have any comments around this episode, please do follow, click the like button, notification button, whatever it might well be, and please do leave some comments on any of the topics that we've discussed, because it will help us produce content that is more relevant to you guys that are watching and listening, depending on the platform of choice. At which case, it's just leaves me to say thank you for watching or listening, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. So thank you and goodbye.